Everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today is we're going to talk about relationships and how to date online for marriage. So I started online dating, I think back in 2012 when Tinder was the thing. And my best friend told me to join it. So I joined it and I had just gotten out of a relationship. So it was the perfect time for her to mention it to me because I was definitely vulnerable and um, really excited or desperate to like get over this person. So I started Tinder and I went on like so many dates. I can't even tell you how many dates. I felt like I was drunk every day because every date it all starts off with a drink. But on all the dates, there was not. I wasn't dating with purpose. I just knew that I was just continuing just kind of how I regularly date and just get to know the person, and I didn't have any criterias. And if it clicked, it clicked. If it didn't click, then I would just move on and go on to the next date. Um, so that wasted a lot of time, and that was that was in my mid 20s. And then I ended up being in a relationship with one of the Tinder people. And that was like the worst. I say it's the worst and the best thing that's ever happened to me because I grew so much from that relationship. And I also went against my instinct to date this person, which it ended up bad, right? So it was still me just kind of dating and going with whatever feelings I had. Um, and yeah, I was the type of person back in the day that I always had a boyfriend. I always was in a relationship, and maybe like probably the longest I've ever was single was 1 year. One year in my after I left college, it was like 1 year. So I didn't really have any time to reflect on what exactly I wanted. And then once the terrible, which I learned a lot from, so I can't really call it terrible, but the Tinder relationship ended. I dated someone who I met naturally, and it still didn't work out, and I didn't understand why. And then I always had the intention of wanting to be married. I always knew I wanted to be married. And I always knew that I loved kids, especially my niece and nephew, and then being a daycare teacher for a bit, and then teaching kids yoga for a bit. So I just always loved babies and kids. And I thought, looking at other moms, like how lucky they were. And I definitely wanted to do that. Um, so then I was like, okay, I really need to fix how I'm dating. Like, what are the things that are messing me up? I continued the online dating, but at this point, the Hinge thing came out, and I felt like the Hinge app was more serious than the Tinder app, and you got to put some criterias on there. And then I continued dating, but I wasn't taking it too seriously because at that time I owned like a yoga studio in San Francisco, so I was so busy. So I would just do some dating here and there, and then if they asked me for another date, I would just go and then just keep dating. It would be new people, new. It would just be a new set of guys on the bench the date, and then after a while, and then the whole like coronavirus pandemic hit, I had a lot of introspection and I was like, what the hell that was I like I'm dating with no goal. I'm just dating blindly. And I started to make a list of all the things that I wanted in a husband, in a relationship, my deal breakers. And I just let myself go wild with the list. I was like, okay, I put everything imaginable on there. But what I didn't do that I did in my 20s was put stupid stuff. Okay, what do I mean by stupid stuff? Stupid stuff would be if they're tall. Okay, if they're tall, if they had a nice car, anything dumb like that. I did not put it on the list. because it just, at this point, if you think about it, and just like seeing all the things that a lot of my friends have gone through, and even my sister who went through a divorce, what really counts is their values and how they are as a character. I don't know, I put stupid stuff like has to be funny, like, yeah, okay, people are funny, after you get comfortable, people end up being funny. And besides, I personally like to be the funny one. So, yeah, I just left all the stupid stuff out, and I put all the things, I let my imagination run wild when making my list. And honestly, my list, this is like kind of embarrassing. So one of the things I used to do in my past life, years ago, was I was an accountant. So I like to keep things organized. So I made a Google sheet and I made like all the characteristics, and then whoever I was like matching with on Hinge, and if we went on a date, I would put their name in another column, and then the other guy in the next column, and the next, and I just kept dating. I think I would go on a date almost every single day, because I couldn't teach yoga because the yoga studios were closed. We weren't allowed to operate. So I would go on every single date, and I wouldn't I wouldn't judge the guy based on their like profile picture or whatever. I would, or job. I would just look at the guy, and then if we matched, I would give him a chance. I would be like, okay, usually I don't date this type of person, but let's just give it a shot. And I have nothing to do. It's a pandemic, whatever. And yeah, I wasn't able to work at that time. So then I went on the dates, and each person I would gently go down the list and see if they checked it off. And if they didn't, I just cut them out. I didn't care if we had any type of like vibes. I didn't care if like, this is just a nice guy, and I thought like, oh, like we hit it off. He's so funny. Nothing like that. If they did not have one of the things on my list, I would just say no to any further dates. I was like hardcore like that. And one of the things I would love to help everyone with, because I am so happy in my marriage, and I just can't believe the life that I'm living right now. And honestly, I owe it all to my husband, to be honest. But I want everyone also to have their happiness, but in their version. Okay, so maybe my life, or what I want to paint my life as, isn't the same as yours, but that doesn't mean my process of how I did manifest this won't work for you. You can get whatever you want. It may not look like mine, but I want to help you come up with a good, solid list. Okay, so if you need help with that, feel free to reach out to me, but making sure that you don't put any stupid stuff on there. Um, yeah, so I was definitely hardcore. Anytime they didn't fit the list, I cut. I cut. You got cut from the team. Um, and that's just kind of how it went down. And I would even make notes. So one of the things that I felt instinctually about the Tinder guy boyfriend that I had back in the day, that was like red flag, red flag. I had the vibes that he was not a good person, or just not the type of person I would date. But I ignored it. I ignored it because I thought, oh, he's cute, he's tall, all the stupid stuff. And then it bit me in the ass. It bit me in the ass. So this time, whenever I had any type of like little taps, or like what I like to say, like red flags, or like vibes, where I'm like, that doesn't seem right, or he's kind of weird, but it's okay, any of those things, I wrote that down in my Google Sheets. I wrote it down because I didn't want myself to ignore it like I used to in the past. Um, yeah, so, and that those things, writing down those things is important, okay? And then that helps you not sweep them under the rug or ignore it. The second thing I did is, when I looked at my list of what I wanted in a husband or for my future relationship, I wrote another column next to it on who I had to be for that person to be attracted to me. Okay? So, I guess let me think. What's an example of that? Um, so for instance, I wanted someone who valued education, who went to college, who has a degree. Okay, so then my column of who I had to be to attract that person would be that I also am an educated woman, and that I did go to college, and I also value um, higher education, and I do have a degree as well. So that's kind of how I did that, because that also helped me evolve as a person to be a match for that higher type of relationship that I wanted. And like for one of the things I said, this is an easy example. I want marriage and kid. I want a guy who wants marriage and kids. So for me to be a girl to get marriage and kids, I also have to want to be married, and I also have to want to be a mother, right? So those are the things that I made sure that I had to be aligned in order for me to be attracting that certain type of person that I wanted. Yeah. So yeah, and then I didn't give up faith, and this is probably the hardest part. And you just continue to date, and then you knock out the ones that don't fit your list. And then you also work on yourself. Okay. You also work on yourself to make sure that that column that you made for yourself, that you are embodying that person. Um, and another example would be like, I want a trustworthy husband. Okay, so for me, I have to be a trustworthy woman. Okay, they have to be able to trust me back, and I have to be able to trust them. So that's another thing that a lot of women have to work on, is being able to trust their partner, because I know there's a lot of shitty men out there. Um, I don't want to say a lot of shitty men, there's probably a lot of wonderful men, but the ones that we may have encountered have left some type of like past bad taste in our mouth, and sometimes we may bring it into the current dating situation. And honestly, when you do that, it's like self-sabotage, right? You're not really giving the other person a chance. So that's part of you working on yourself to make sure that you are a match for the person that you actually want. Um, yeah, so that's how I did it. If you want any tips on how to do it, feel free to email me. Oh, and I'll also say that my process has served me well, and this is like probably the craziest thing that ever like blows my mind. Um, my husband matched every single thing on my love list, on my husband wish list, and that still blows my mind till today, because your girl has high standards. Okay, so people have commented to me, like friends are like, oh, it's like, are you really gonna find anybody with all that? But I believed in it, and I got it. Okay, I definitely got it, and I've seen other women who got it as well. And I will say one tip is that, say you're in a relationship and you're watching this video and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should stay with this guy. Be careful of trying to mold the person that you're with to be what is on your wish list for your partner. Okay? Because that won't last. He will always be who he is. And if you try to psychology him into it, therapi- therapist him into it, or manipulate him to be into it by making him feel guilty, any of those things are not sustainable. They're not sustainable. So I would say, have the confidence and faith to let that person go and then find the one that actually has everything on your list. Okay, so I've seen people do that too, like try to make that person into what they want. And, it ends up being like the guy gets resentful because they're not who they are and they feel like they're being like another person that they wish not to be. And you either like get a divorce, or the whole marriage is resentful and it's like unhealthy. Just you have to practice your faith, let the person go, and find the person that also wants marriage, that also wants all the things that you want. Okay, you can find it. I did. So, yeah, that's my video today. And like I said, reach out to me if you have any questions.